Welcome to the ever-growing cult of wokeism, where worshipping the devil has now been normalized. No, literally, I was on a train and someone's bag literally said Antichrist on it. Don't tell me Dajjal is here already. Where in this culture, you go to the gym and despite trying not to look anywhere, all you see is literally cloth covering the most private parts. It sounds very disgusting the way I'm explaining it, but that's literally what it is. This is what freedom is where I live. Imagine you're living in a very cold place, or maybe you already live in a very cold area. I live in Toronto, right? And Toronto is known for two things. First, it's known for its very cold winters. And second, it's known for pink-haired, overweight women walking around, pretty much not covering themselves and trying to be as naked as possible in cold, harsh winters, just so they can show off their quote-unquote freedom. Living in a liberal city as a Muslim feels so damn hypocritical. Despite our religion condemning what liberalism is, we shake hands, we interact, and we have friends that are liberal people. And yet, despite all of this, it seems to be an ever-growing community where now young Muslim children are being taught transgenderism, LGBT, they, them, BS, with the goal of having these young Muslims being raised as a they, them. In my ends, drag queens are being celebrated like they're saints. Astaghfirullah. So I recently went to the Middle East, where it seems like they still live in a regular and normal society. And I'm telling you, the people there look at the West like it's a zoo and it's a circus. Maybe not the older uncles and aunties that still think the West is a winter wonderland. Now, based on what I said, it sounds like I'm making takfir and I'm ungrateful for being in the West. That is not the case. I'm actually quite grateful for what the West has brought me, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't be doing all this business stuff if the West hasn't been here. I wouldn't be knowing how to speak English if I wasn't in the West. I am completely grateful for that. I wouldn't be living such a comfortable life if I wasn't in the West. At the same time, the West is being diminished. The West is destroying young Muslim children and Muslims in general, so we have to speak up against the fitna that is going on. We cannot stay silent. We don't live in an individualistic society. I mean, we all have problems in this world. For example, in Palestine, they have wars. But in the West, we also have a war. But it's called a mental war, where your enemy is controlling you without you even knowing you're being controlled. That is a different kind of war. So how do we Muslims living in the West become someone who doesn't get dragged into this liberal agenda? And how do we protect our family members so they don't turn liberal? No, seriously, if you look at Jubilee, they literally feature liberal Muslims on it. Like, that makes any sense? How do we man up in a feministic society where they purposely play and show us females all the time 24/7 so we can become soft? That is purposely placed. I remember going into Dollarama, which is our dollar store here in Canada, and I was just fed up by just always constantly hearing music that's playing in the background as ambient noise, and it always seems to be females talking. And I realized after a lot of research that music is a form of control, and they can actually control your mind in the way you think with music. Playing music with females' voices is a perfect way to do that. And finally, how do we save ourselves from a society that is falling apart right in front of our eyes? But after being on self-improvement and just taking responsibility over my life for more than a year, I figured out that the first step to doing all of this, becoming the best Muslim versions of ourselves. And there is one thing that I want to touch on, which is called attention. You see, there's a very famous term that goes around, which is where your attention goes, your energy flows, right? Simply the attention you give to your friends, your family, the things that you look at on a daily basis, specifically and most importantly your social media, basically determines who you become. The best example is with a depressed person. If a depressed person were to always think of themselves as depressed and their attention always goes to negative thoughts, their attention always goes to negative songs like listening to Juice WRLD, and they glorify being depressed, they're just gonna stay depressed. They're not gonna improve themselves because there's no other way for them to go. I mean, they only think about being depressed, so they're always just gonna be depressed. But if a depressed person were to watch, for example, someone like Andrew Tate, don't you think that they'll do at least a few push-ups at a minimum after watching Andrew Tate? So the more you scroll, the more you watch random videos, the more of that you'll be. Why do you think these liberal people never give attention to people like Andrew Tate? Rather, they give attention to things like Genshin Impact or all these pretty gay games. Why do you think there's a certain aesthetic with these woke cultures? Why do you think they always have red hair or blue or green hair? And most of the time they're overweight and they just look like they haven't showered in 3 months. No offense, and again, I don't want to be that rude, but that's just the reality of it, and we must speak up against this because they gave it attention to things that make them feel like that. They've been programmed. So the more you watch random stuff on the internet, the more you give attention to things that make no sense, the more you'll be pretty much retarded. The number 2 thing that really kind of helped me change my life is embrace Islamic values. Unfortunately, the West has failed at teaching us Islamic values, right? I mean, the West has no value of their own. I mean, the birth rates are the lowest it's ever been. The marriage rates are 50%. There are no families anymore. Everyone's becoming degenerate. There are no values anymore. Except when you go against what the liberalism says, then they pretty much cancel you, they ban you, or they pretty much off you without anyone knowing, and they make them an excuse. It's a world of hypocrisy. The more you go on self-improvement, the more you realize that Islam has been talking about this stuff since day one. So to make sure, we must follow the Sunnah and have the best, most perfect values for us, the Sharia. We must implement the Sharia in our lives to the best of our ability while obeying the laws of the West, because again, we Muslims are law-abiding citizens unless they go against what we believe. And one thing that really helped me is making an identity of a person with value. And we have the best role model that we can ever have. The greatest man to ever walk on the face of this earth, which is our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So again, based on the hadiths, based off what the ulama or the scholars say, we should follow Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to the best of our ability, and in return we'll be the best people we can ever be. And finally, number 3 is having a circle of Muslim brothers or sisters for the sisters watching this video. This is something that I still struggle with. It is finding actual good friends that really take advantage of everything that they've been given. And again, I'm not saying I do that all the time. I guess I make a lot of mistakes, but the thing is, like, not everyone will be taking responsibility of their lives. Not everyone will be off social media. The thing is, most people will still scroll all the time. Most people will still play a lot of video games. But again, if you're gonna look at it, why not have people that have actual values? At a minimum, we should just stick with Muslims that are on the Sunnah, that are on the Deen. Maybe they play video games, maybe they scroll, but at least they have values that go against what the devils are preaching to us. So I recommend being more involved in the MSAs. I think that's a great place to start, in Muslim student associations, because at least in a university, which is one of the most degenerate places in the world, you have a little group of Muslims that think, you know what? I'm not in it for this degeneracy. I'm not in it for this drinking, partying, intimacy stuff. And let's just praise Allah and let's worship Allah in this little bubble. And you find a good amount of Muslims and Muslimas there to be friends with. So to finalize this video, I don't really want to make takfir on these liberal people, because at the end of the day, they're human, and as Allah is the best of guiders, Allah can guide them and to becoming the best Muslims, right? So that's why I want to end it off is, if you're friends with any liberal people, don't just unfriend them. Now it sounds like I'm contradicting myself, and you have to remember, a lot of da'wah comes from just how you interact. So they look at you and then they can try to imitating you. So I recommend really taking responsibility of your lives. And the main thing for this video is attention. Give attention to things that will truly change you. And in return, just by giving attention to it, you'll just change automatically. Your mind is the GPS and your body is a car that will take you there. Your liberal friends might look at that and they might want to change. They might be super tired. There are probably some liberal people who realize that this liberal stuff is all fake, and they're probably really tired and they want a way out. So if you can show them that way, that would be amazing. So at the end, you have 2 choices. You either fall into the satanic liberal agenda with your future family members that really should be saved, inshallah, because Allah is the best of savers, right? Or you can really take a responsibility of your life and give attention to things that will really help you. In return, with the help of Allah, of course, you can start changing people's lives. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.